Good evening, this is CBJ Focus. I'm Nolan Benson.
And I'm Anna Butler. Our top stories today: a sharp increase in drug-related casualties in Nottingham.
Is Forest Fields our most dangerous park?
And could this be the last St Patrick's Day Nottingham sees?
Our top story today: Nottinghamshire police are warning of the dangers of drugs after 7 students collapsed in the city. Officers are also investigating the death of 1 Nottingham Trent University student, which may also be drug-related. Joining us in the studio now is CBJ Focus reporter Ore Olikoga.
Ore, this is shocking. Where did this information come from?
So having spoken to both the police and health services, both of them have said that they've had to deal with incidents where young people have been hospitalised as a result of consuming drugs. Now, they said this has taken place on nights out, and they also believe that criminals are targeting them specifically.
I think especially with freshers, when they come into a new environment, they're quite vulnerable, and drug dealers and distributors seem to take advantage of that. So I think that's probably the general reason why there's been an increase in drug use. And, I mean, yeah, it's been really sad, the deaths that have happened over the past few weeks, especially it's been people that have been very engaged in the student union, and I think it will show, like, as a warning to students that, like, this isn't a joke and people can get extremely hurt from it. So all I can say is it's not worth the risk taking these drugs. You need to be very, very careful. Yeah.
Ore, how sure can we be that these recent deaths are actually drug-related?
Well, speaking to the Nottingham City Council coroner, they said that the 3 deaths are actually drug-related, and also an NTU student was found dead in his flat. So they are telling students to be vigilant when they are on nights out, and to also contact the police if they do see something that is suspicious. And
do we know when this incident happened?
Well, they haven't given a time frame specifically, but they have just said that students should just watch out, as it's been a recurring thing in the last couple of months.
Thank you.
The Forest Recreation Ground is the most dangerous park in Nottingham after recent statistics were released by the police. CBJ Focus's James Nucky has more.
By day, a football pitch. At night, a place for drinking. Forest Recreation Ground in Forest Fields is famous for the Goose Fair and Bonfire Night, but a recent statistic shows a worrying trend for the park, as it was named, statistically, the most dangerous park in Nottingham. Usually a place for sport and leisure, but it seems the park is no longer a safe place to even play football. 109 crimes were reported in 2015, with thefts, assaults and drug-related offences the main issues. But even rape and vehicle damage were reported to the police. At Radford Road Police Station, they believe the statistics are an unfair representation of the park, and they think that the events in the grounds are the main contributor to the crimes.
Why has the Forest got so many? Well, we have the Goose Fair. We have nearly 500,000 people visit over 5 days. We're an event centre. The Forest is an event centre for Nottingham. That's a large reason for the amount of crime.
DI Andy Townsend, who runs the Arboretum project, which aims to protect the area from crime, believes the project is helping the recreation ground.
High visibility, foot patrols during the day and during the early evening that you didn't have before. So it's got to be a safer place. And I think we'll see the crime trends for 2016 are a lot different to those figures you've seen for 2015.
At Forest Fields Advice Centre, even their employees have faced issues when in the park.
But I have had incident myself. I was just walking on the pavement going into town, and I had somebody come out and ask me time, a young boy, and 5 minutes later he jumped on me and pulled my handbag off, and which was quite scary. So I avoid even going on the Gregory Boulevard on my own, and avoid walking on that side of the forest ground itself.
With the Arboretum project underway, it's clear the police are doing all they can to make the park a safer place. James Nucky, CBJ Focus.
And now it's time for a roundup of today's other stories.
Reports of explosions at Brussels Airport are affecting flights to and from airports nationwide, including East Midlands Airport. 2 explosions have been identified at Brussels Airport, with smoke reportedly rising from one of the terminal buildings. The airport has been closed as a result. Belgian media have been reported 15 known casualties. Follow at CBJ_Focus for all of the latest updates.
A former social care worker at Beechwood Community Home has been convicted of sexually abusing children at the home during the 1980s. Andrus Loggins is the first carer to be convicted as part of the police inquiry into historic abuse at children's homes in Nottinghamshire.
A new city centre-based police station will save up to £6 million of taxpayers' money. It is claimed Nottingham Police and the County Council's Community Protection Team will move into Byron House at the top of Maid Marian Way next month. Temporary Chief Inspector Mike Manley described the new station as the heart of where we will be tackling crime and disorder for the city.
The head teacher at Nottingham Girls High School has announced that she'll be standing down this Easter as head of the school. Sue Gorman said it was the right time to step down, saying that following 10 years, the school is entering a new era and change is needed. After being at the school for 5 years, Deputy Head Teacher Julie Keller will be taking on the vacant role. Chancellor George Osborne has had a difficult week after being forced to climb down over plans to cut benefits for disabled people. He was forced to make the U-turn after his budget proposals were met with criticism from both sides of the House. Work and Pensions Secretary of State Ian Duncan Smith resigned whilst opposition leader launched this scathing attack on the government.
Not have made his priorities clearer. While 500,000 people with disabilities are losing over £1 billion in personal independence payments, corporation tax is being cut and billions handed out in tax cuts to the very wealthy.
The final straw for many campaigners who say disabled people have already suffered a long line of swinging cuts. Earlier we spoke to Charlotte Throssell, who's from the Nottingham support group Disability Direct.
Charlotte, can you explain why these changes were so unpopular?
The changes that were proposed was going to take a huge amount of money out of people's budgets, out of their wallets. It was a huge amount of money to come away from disabled people, their families, their carers and their support networks. And I don't know about you, but if you lost a large amount of money overnight, you wouldn't be very happy.
These changes aren't the first changes that we've seen to disability allowances. How much have you already seen people suffer from these changes?
Literally 2 weeks before the budget announcements were made, there was £30 a week reduced from the work-related activity group. So if you need additional support with finding work, you now had that £30 removed next time you come for that benefit. And all the changes that happened with DLA moving over to PIP and the criteria around that, it isn't always about money, but about knowledge and understanding of what's happening.
And what reaction did they prompt here in Nottingham?
I think to begin with it was huge sighs of relief, some cheers that he'd gone because he is seen as the bad guy, the guy that's removing money and food. But I think then people were starting to get very worried who would take over and what kind of cuts they would bring in the future.
And looking to the future, what does the future look like for people who have a disability?
Nervous at the moment. A lot of people are quite worried. David Cameron's already said the disability budget is not sustainable and he will be looking at reviewing it again. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but it will be looked at again. So tip of the iceberg, I'm afraid.
Cool.
Thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
Well, the budget included a whole range of new measures. Our reporter Anthony Sinclair has been investigating how these will affect people and businesses here in Nottingham.
Young people will be given a pull-up onto the housing ladder. The Chancellor George Osborne introduced the Lifetime ISA, where people under 40 save money. The government says it's willing to put in £1 for every £4 tucked away. Could this mean more people buying their properties outright in the future and moving away from renting their first home?
Well, I don't think it's probably going to have that much of an effect on the buy-to-let landlord scheme. It's common knowledge that most people are living in properties and living with their parents longer than they ever used to. So the incentives of getting people on the housing ladder, I think it's a great incentive and I think it will help. Although when it's the sort of 40-year sort of threshold could be a little bit late in terms of if he's looking to turn around the housing crisis as it is at the moment. You know, that's it's definitely quite far in advance and a way off before that will actually have any real impact or benefit on anything.
Businesses are seen as the backbone of the British economy. As young budding entrepreneurs aim to set up their own business venture, current analysis seems promising.
Certainly over the last 12 months there's been good growth. Now at the end of last year that slowed down for those businesses that are active in international markets, so businesses working overseas. There's lots of uncertainties there. Businesses active only in UK markets have been pretty resilient so far. There are uncertainties in the year ahead. We have a referendum on our EU membership, things that can cause wobbles in business confidence. But so far, to date, I'd say businesses are pretty confident and growth is definitely there. Maybe not as strong as it was 12 months ago, but it's still there.
With lots of different measures affecting all walks of society, including stopping child tax credit for a third child from 2017, where does Nottingham fit in?
I always feel that you shouldn't rely on something like that to feed your family. So it does make me think I wouldn't have a third child though, because we couldn't afford it.
Great Conservative supporter, but I'm now ashamed of them. I think they squeeze the pits of the poor people too much, and I genuinely think they'll pay the price for it.
In all fairness, I haven't really listened to it, because at the end of the day they're going to do what they want to do.
I'm a former teacher, so I listen quite carefully to the bits on education, so I feel quite strongly about the decisions he made. And I work as a freelance writer now, so the changes in the personal tax allowance were quite important to me.
This is Anthony Sinclair for CBJ Focus.
Britain's longest-standing St. Patrick's Day is in danger of losing its funding, Samantha Frey reports.
Drinking, dancing and enjoying the sun, Nottingham's Old Market Square brought in the crowds as it held its 17th St. Patrick's Day parade. This year, the planning for the event hasn't run as smoothly as the day itself. The future of one of Britain's longest-standing St. Paddy's Day festivals was under huge pressure due to a lack of funding and volunteers. Paul Curtis, chairman of the St. Patrick's Day Committee, tells us about the troubles they faced this year.
We've come to the financial reality of the situation, where in point of fact costs are now overcoming funding. And what we've tried to do today is still provide the, shall we say, the atmosphere, but at the same time we've had to reduce the size of what was the parade.
Despite having to scale down the event this year, at least 8,000 people were expected to attend the parade. Everyone was in high spirits, with most of the pubs heaving. Many Irish locals turned up to celebrate, and with the sunny weather, it helped to draw in the crowds.
We do St. Patrick's Day good here in Nottingham.
Yes, it is amazing in Ireland, but yeah, we do it good here.
I come here today because, you know, I'm a favourite guys of Guinness, innit? And I like Guinness, innit? And Guinness is from Ireland.
I'm Jamaican, so, you know, I've never experienced the Irish, so I thought I'd experience it. It's been a good day. Everyone's come out, as you can see, enjoying the sun.
Hopes remain high that funding and donations will increase for next year, so we can continue to celebrate St. Paddy's Day in style here in Nottingham. I've been Samantha Frey for CBJ Focus.
The European Union began just over 30 years ago, and now is an end in sight. Our reporter Alicia Russell has more.
The general public of Britain are caught in two different directions due to David Cameron announcing an EU referendum. The referendum will take place on the 23rd of June, and anyone of voting age can take part. Leaving the EU means that Britain would no longer contribute to the EU budget, resulting in less costs, but on the other hand means Britain will lose their negotiating powers in trade. According to the whatukThinks.com, 51% of the public want to remain in the EU and 49% want to exit.
Earlier we were joined by Jordan Thorpe from the Nottingham Green Party and Fran Loy from UKIP, who are giving us their views on the upcoming EU referendum. I just want to know, why should voters vote to stay in the EU?
So we've received our workers' rights from the EU, we've received our environmental protection rights, our water, our air, and in the future what we'll be seeing from the EU is a EU-wide cut down on corporate tax avoidance. So those are the key reasons to stay within the EU.
And Fran, everything that Jordan's just said, they all seem great. Why would we want to leave them behind?
I'll just pick on one of those, and that's the tax avoidance, because EU are in favour of big business, and the reason why we've got so much tax avoidance, like Google, is because they're operating to the EU rules. You know, so I understand what you're saying. On paper, it looks good, but in reality, You've got your Amazons, your Googles and your Vodafones who get away with it. Why? Because they can have their headquarters based somewhere else.
And if we left the European Union, how would this benefit us? How would we
benefit
get these corporations to pay their tax?
Yeah, we'll be able to elect a government here who could actually tax corporations here, and they will be able to put legislation in or take legislation out to raise taxes or to actually get rid of taxes, and we could vote them in or out every 5 years.
Jordan seemed to disagree.
No, what we're going to see here is if you leave the EU, there'll be more competition between countries to have the lowest tax rate, the best sweetheart deals with these companies. What the EU is proposing is that all these big companies have to put down their revenues and their profits country to country within the EU to operate.
And sorry, just next question. And the big question on everyone's lips is immigration. Why do you think staying in the EU is a good thing for free movement of people?
Well, in terms of the economy, it benefits our economy to have these young, high-skilled people working within the UK. They mostly work, say, in the NHS. And what we're seeing here is a gross exaggeration of the amount of people compared to our population. It's not that many people when you compare it to the immigration levels in the US and Australia.
Prior to the European Union, we had immigration, and it was relatively strict. You had border controls. You could go to any other European country to work, wasn't a problem, but you had to go there and have a job, otherwise you would be asked after your visa expired to leave. And what we've got now is a Schengen area of Europe where you can come in through Turkey and come all the way over to Western Europe. I say it's got catastrophic effects. There is some economic benefits from migration, yes, but we can still have those when we leave. But it's a security issue as well, and we can't ignore that.
And Fran, there's been a lot of discussion about the risks of leaving EU. Why do you think we're more benefited leaving outweighs the risks?
Well, yeah, the risks. But the thing is if we leave, we'll have control of our own destinies. And this is about democracy and sovereignty. You know, we'll be an independent country again to make our own trade deals with countries around the world. Many countries around the world aren't in the EU, and they wake up every morning not in a panic attack going, we're not in the EU. We can do well with that outside the EU.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen.
Around 150 people gathered at the National Water Sports Centre on Sunday, ready to take part in the Sport Relief Mile to raise money for charity. Old and young alike took part in running and cycling races around the lake at Home Pierpoint Country Park, home of the National Water Sports Centre. Families could choose to either run, jog or cycle 1, 3 or 6 miles to do their bit for charity. The event, in connection with Sainsbury's, takes place every year and encourages local people of all ages to come together to help to make a difference to people living in the UK and the world's poorest communities. Event organisers were pleased with the turnout.
It's a beautiful day and it's the Sport Relief Mile. We've got 1, 3 and 6 miles going around the lake today. We've got roughly 150, 160 people taking part. So we've got lots of families, young children, everyone's come out to play today. We're dishing out medals and water to everyone. We've got the music playing and everyone's doing a great job.
And now for sport, CBJ Focus's Charlie Richardson has been investigating Nottingham Forest's performance after the sacking of Dougie Freeman.
I'm stood here at the Forest City Ground following the sacking of Dougie Freeman. The decision comes after one win in the last 6 games. Forest suffered a 3-0 home defeat against Sheffield Wednesday last week, forcing owner Hal Asawi to sack the Scots manager. The decision comes ahead of the Derby game next week.
Security was tightened and tensions were high at the Derby ground on Saturday before what fans would say was the most important game of the season. Thousands of Forest fans showed up to support their team despite Forest's poor performance recently. A game which was huge for Forest to win anyway had added pressure after Freedman was out. Despite Derby taking all 3 points, Forest fans kept their morale high throughout. After the game, we put the question to the fans: was the result down to Freedman being sacked?
No, they've been losing all season. The teams have been playing, they've lost to poor opposition all season and they've had no form when he was in charge, and after, it's no surprise.
Who's the new guy? Changed around the whole dynamic of the team, changing the up front. They just don't have a threat at the moment, so yeah, definitely detrimental to their results.
Managerless and 15th on the league table, the future looks bleak for Forest. This is Charlie Richardson for CBJ Focus.
Disappointing result there for Forest fans. But now time for the weather with Anthony Sinclair.
A very good afternoon to you. Spring has arrived and the Easter Bunny is on its way to a garden near you. So let's take a look at the weather for the next couple of days. Hopefully the sun will grace us with her warmth this weekend. Not much has changed on the weather front today. There was some lovely sunshine earlier this morning, however it wasn't here to stay. This is what it looks like this afternoon. Cloud cover throughout the East Midlands with highs of 11 degrees in Derby and 10 degrees in Nottingham and Leicester. Tonight there will be some heavy cloud and fog cover around Derby and Leicester. However, it won't be too chilly with temperatures dropping to around 8 degrees Celsius. Expect partly cloudy skies in Nottinghamshire and with possible lows of 7 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow the sunshine will be fighting for a chance to say hello. Expect highs of 11 to 12 degrees around Notts and highs of around 10 degrees in Leicester. Derbyshire will have some cloud cover in the south and snippets of sunshine peeking through towards Chesterfield. Temperatures will drop tomorrow night with cloudy skies throughout the East Midlands cancelling out the sunshine's earlier work. Highs of 8 in Derby and lows of 5 in Notts and Leicester. Good night from me, Anthony and all of the team here at CBJ Focus.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but you can keep updated on news stories by following us on Twitter at CBJ_Focus or subscribing to our YouTube channel. Join us next week where we'll have a guest and we'll be discussing meningitis, but since then, see you then.
Yeah, goodbye.
Goodbye, thank you.